I did not think it was a coincidence that in the days before this episode aired, we learned that Kieran Culkin and Sarah Snook were changing their Emmy eligibility to leads. And you see that, and you're like, okay, yeah, go for the brass ring. You know, throw your hat, like be like Tom Wamsgams.
If there's a ring, my hat is in it. Yeah.
And then you see this episode, and you're like, oh, they are the stars.
Yeah,
of their
and there's
versions
just
of
more
the show.
real estate for them because you're not doing half the episode or a third of the episode with Brian Cox. But to the point about grief, you know, Shiv schedules her crying, and is obviously in this very like vulnerable place, but is probably doing the most compartmentalization because there are so many shots of Sarah Snook where she's making one face when no one else is looking and then makes a completely different face when she kind of emerges back into public. Like,
Yes.
There's a couple of shots of her with Tom where he says something to her and it really hits her as she's sort of staring into his chest. But when she looks up, it's like, oh, now I'm pretending to be a Hollywood kind of screwball comedy Rosalind Russell vixen again. And it's like, that's not who you really are right now, but it's because you're somebody who needs to grab 20 minutes in a dark conference room and cry, is because you can't really show the world your face.
And I think there's an extra level to that, too. I think that we've long thought, and the show has borne this out, that she is smarter than her brothers. Like, if they did the NFL draft test, you know, that, like, she would excel.
Oh, yeah. Is that the S2?
The S2.
Yeah.
I don't think that she...
It's come under a lot of criticism.
I agree. No, it's problematic.
Yeah.
You know, but again, I only watch ATN Sports. So for me, it's pretty...
So they're just like, S2 results are in.
And he failed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean she's more competent at this. But I think that one of the important distinctions between her and her brothers is that they have, you know, a fucking Washington Monument-sized tower of problems inside of them.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they have secrets. I think she's self-aware enough to compartmentalize and be aware of the secrets she has. Not just literal secrets like her pregnancy, which continues to exist, but her...
As does her imbibing of alcohol.
It does.
Yeah.
But
Which
also,
is, you know, very European. She could probably get away with that.
It's fine. Her obstetrician is French. It's fine. But also that she is deeply sad about many, many, many things. And I think she knows that. Where I think Kendall thinks he's going to beast mode sadness. And Roman is so fucked up that he doesn't understand what's literally pouring out of him in a almost hideously vulnerable way is this unattended stuff. I think that I do think this was an exceptional Sarah Snook episode because of the mastery of the levels to it. I did also want to ask, you know, yesterday when we recorded our pod with Damon Lindelof and Tara Hernandez about Mrs. Davis, when we came into the studio we were supposed to record, and Sean Fennessy was alone in there.
Do you think he was scheduling his grief for
about the Aaron Rodgers
for the end of the Zach Wilson era?
Yeah. We should check in with him after we're done recording.
Friends reach out to friends. I think Roman also was obviously grappling with his grief by firing lots of people. And essentially, like, when he fires Joy, it's partially because she's not showing an appropriate amount of deference. And partially because she obviously senses the vulnerability or the kind of the opening to just twist the knife a little bit and be like, well, I can't really make hits when the most talented people in Hollywood don't want to work with this company because of your ties to Jared Menken, right? And and the conservative nature of this company in general. And then when Jerry hits him with the "you're not your father" bit, he fires her. So he's basically reacting constantly to anybody questioning what his father would have done, whether or not he's his father, whether or not the thing that his father built will survive.
It's also on a really deeper primal level. I mean, I'm sure we all have experiences either with people we knew as kids or even ourselves that, like, there's a moment sometimes in childhood games when everyone's playing and then suddenly someone isn't.
Yeah.
It's like, get the fuck off me. Or, like, you know, and like there's something that's deeper that's not about that moment that comes roaring and pouring out. And it is pure it is pure childhood. And that's what we've seen now 3 straight one-on-one, well, to what Kendall was
What
there.
Does he say when she's like, you fired her? And he's like, I didn't fire her. I said you're fired to her.
Yeah, so we can put her in global.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's also always worth saying that the satire of Hollyweird and how the business works and how people and the entitlement and the assumption. What does he call it? Like
fuck you would? Oh.
But I mean he has this run where he's just like basically you live in a segregated city zoned on top of a fault line. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Clearly he's not supporting Nithya for city council. Like if he got into the weeds, he'd see that we've got a lot going on here. But
We got to check out Kaya for that.
What's
Little LA City Council joke.
Did we get a chuckle?
Yeah.
Whew, okay, already we got a good one today. I think, it's an incredible satire of that, and also of like Hollywood's just sort of, we have a seat at the table with you to express our personal grievances, and he's just like making another piece of IP.
Yes.
I mean, it is cynical, and it is, I think, disturbingly accurate. But in terms of how thin-skinned this boy is, how ill-suited to the rooms he's walking into and storming out of he is, it really messes with the viewer and fan of the show. Because, and I think we've alluded to this before, TV is a hypnotizing trap. Like, you root for people that you spend time with. You just cheer for them, whether you like their stories, or you like the actor, or you like the lulls, whatever. You find yourself saddling up. And I don't think I'm alone to say that, like, you wanted better for these people, even though they're all monsters. You want better for them. And to see Roman flame the fuck out like this.
Yeah.
Was jarring, even if it was never surprising.
Isn't this also kind of the, I don't know if miracle is the right word, but isn't this sort of the sort of, this is what I would say as the benefit of why you would make a long form prestige television show instead of a feature is that, so take for instance, Wolf of Wall Street, which is almost as long as a long form television show, but Wolf of Wall Street faced similar criticisms that Succession sometimes faces of like, well, we're actually like almost like lauding and falling in love with monsters. Yeah. I didn't personally have that problem with Wolf of Wall Street. A, I just thought it was like an incredible like satirical comedy, but B, like it moves so quickly that I don't think I was ever just like, I'm so into Jordan Belfort. I hope he comes out on the other side okay. But with Succession, I think the reason why you have these moments of, against my better judgment, I am rooting for Roman to be okay, is because we spent so much time with him.
Yeah, that's
and we've seen him in so many different kinds of moments in his life that it does give you the totality of a fictional person, right? Like you kind of do see this guy. He's the one who goes and looks at his dad's body. Like we have seen him at his lowest, we have seen him at his craziest, we have seen him at his highest.
And we've seen him at his most honest, which is when his brother sends him a deep fake of their dead father.
And he starts listening to it like it's like, a message from beyond the grave.
He's touching the stove.
Yeah.
He's touching the stove. That's the only thing that makes him feel anything, and he's listening to it on a loop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awful. It's awful. And I to run it back.
It's like he's like Roman Roy has a little dick. Is that like micro dick?
Yeah. And, this is what Kieran Culkin has been building towards, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's also, this is something you sort of said at the beginning, right? Like you have a long form show where everybody has been, by nature of the power structure, a beta, and now everybody thinks they're an alpha, and not necessarily the case.
No.
Not necessarily the case. The Roman one got me. The Shiv, should we do which sibling do you want to do next? 'Cause I do think it's worth going through.
The third one, Kendall.
Connor, yeah. Kendall.
Kendall used his Living Plus presentation as a eulogy.
Yeah.
And you could say it was an insincere one, or you could say it was an opportunistic one. Both of those things probably Logan would have respected. He did cringe stuff. He did his weird offbeat, keywords all seemed to click.
Big shoes.
And he went off script, but he found something on that stage where it was both... he was able to convince people about his importance. And I think that more than being his dad, like he's always wanted to see himself or be seen as an important thinker and like a guy who like disrupts and changes things. Mm-hmm. And, as soon as he starts talking about like, it doesn't make any sense when he's talking about it, when he's like, this is it. We have to get our tech guys to look at this and the hockey stick, and brings that poor accountant Pete in, and it's just like, we can double it, we can change the numbers, and I think at that moment where he's like, if I could have had another year with my dad to say what went unsaid, that's priceless. It's like, well, there you go. Like people eat that shit up.
It was also incredibly sad because he's wearing a little flight outfit, like a real boy. It's like going up to see the pilot and getting wings and thinking you're ready to fly a plane. It reminded me a little bit too of like, there's many examples of this, but like, remember when Tiger Woods decided to become a Navy SEAL? Mm-hmm. It's just like,
I do remember that.
Like I'm going to go do this now, and it's totally chill and cool, and I'm
Yeah.
fine with my father dying. Like, it's all fine.
Yeah.
A lot of that energy. Also, the really fucked up codependence of their psychological traumas, in the sense that Roman is behaving like a lunatic. Roman needs to be removed from power immediately and maybe hugged. Like, he even asks to hug his family,
Yeah.
which was unprecedented. And he refers to it as the grabby, touchy, huggy thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Totally fine and normal. And when he is called on it or caught or talking to Kendall's response, like, if you could do a supercut, and if you want to do the Logan deepfake technology on Roman, you could just take everything Roman said about firing people and how he's just behaved and just replace it with the words, should we get some more Coke?
Right.
Like, that's Kendall's response.
Yes.
It triggers everything Kendall wants to hear because it makes him the big boy, the bigger brother, who can tell him it's okay. But it also plugs into what you're speaking to, which is not that Kendall wants to be a steady steward of his father's legacy or of this company. He wants to be radical. He wants to be dangerous. He wants to be
every
a Viking
decision
like
can
his
be
father.
spun into this idea that it's like, exactly like the joke that I made earlier about how they're going to spin this. If it's just like leadership says this, but caveat, could these guys do this,
And all of this with the goosing the markets and tricking the numbers, it is all a game.
Yeah.
And it's in that, Kendall and Lucas are similar, because he's just like, oh, I have an atomic bomb in my pocket that can move markets.
Yeah.
It's called my phone. I'll make a little Nazi joke and then I'll delete it. Like, it's just a game. It's just a game. But I think that, the emotions that run through the Roys are a little bit different than what's going on in Scandinavia.